Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the session on writing an effective college essay. My name is Yana Ovcharenko, and I am an outreach coordinator at Education USA Ukraine. Personally, I believe that our today's topic is extremely important because well-written college essay can set you apart from other thousand students. But I know that sometimes it can be challenging to craft your essays, and I promise that our speaker will equip you with valuable tools and insights you need to succeed in it. So I'm really excited to introduce our guest speaker, Kessidi. She is an international enrollment counselor at University of Arizona, and she has extensive expertise in guiding students through the admission process. And I promise she will share some valuable tips with you and help you to make your essay stand out. Kessidi, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Yana. I'm so excited to be here today with all of you. This is going to be a lot of information. So at the end, we will definitely have time to answer your questions and kind of walk you through anything maybe that you've missed. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So just first, a little bit of information about the University of Arizona, where I work. I'm going to give you kind of a little bit of a gist about the different offerings that we have, what you could study at our institution, and what we're looking for as an example for students that are applying internationally. We are founded in 1885, so we're actually older than the state of Arizona. We're super dedicated to education, and we really love this statistic about us. Our student population is over 50,000 students, which means we're a really big institution. So if you're wanting to be a part of a school that has major diversity and is really big and has lots of different opportunities to connect with other students, people from all over the world, people with different points of view, this is definitely a good option for you. Our student population has over 120 countries represented. Over 7% of our student population are international students, and we love that. We have over 40,000 undergraduate students, so the majority of our students are studying their bachelor's degree, but we also have graduate level programs too for master's students and PhD students. And we are very proud to have a diverse student body. Almost 50% of our student body is diverse in one way or another. We are located in the southwestern part of the United States in a city called Tucson, Arizona. So Tucson is located where you see it circled on your screen here. It is located in the very southern part of the state of Arizona, close to the Mexican border, and not too far from a lot of other really cool places like Los Angeles, Las Vegas, and we have Grand Canyon National Park, which is amazing within itself. So even if you don't come to the University of Arizona and you do come to the United States to study, please try to come to Arizona just to see Grand Canyon National Park, if anything at all. Tucson has a population of about 1 million people, so it's a relatively small city, and our weather is wonderful, always sunny. If you love the snow, then maybe Tucson is not the best place for you. But if you're thinking about mild winters, not having to, what we say is you don't have to shovel sunshine. So at least there's that. It's a very beautiful city. We also are a dark sky city, so that means you can see the stars at night. And that's why we're also world renowned for our astronomy program and aeronautical sciences, things like that. We have our small town feel with big city amenities. We're what's called a UNESCO City of Gastronomy. So we're known for our food. We have food options from all over the world. So when you're missing your mom's cooking, you can probably find something similar. But just remember, nothing is ever going to be as good as mom's cooking. A little bit about our rankings. Some students are really interested in knowing how prestigious the institution that they're wanting to go to is. And we are a very prestigious institution. We're a top 20 public research institution. So that means we get a lot of funding to do research in all different areas, science and business, everything. We're also a top 50 public university. And along with that, you can see some of our program rankings. So for example, Management Information Systems is number 2, along with Water Resources. Our physical science programs are number 3. And like I said, our astronomy and astrophysics programs are really strong as well. So number 5. Just a few statistics for you there. When you're thinking about choosing the right institution for you when coming to the United States to complete a degree, thinking about the academic environment is a really big part of it. The faculty to student ratio should be something that you're kind of thinking about. Do you want to be in the really big lecture hall with 100 different students? Do you want that kind of experience? Or maybe do you want to be in a smaller classroom setting so that way you can have a more one-on-one situation with your professor? At U of A, we have a 17-to-1 student to faculty ratio. So you definitely are well supported by faculty and you can get your questions answered. We have a 25 average class size, but that of course varies by your major. So for example, our architecture students, they're much smaller classes because it's more hands-on activities in order to, become an architect. And along with that, teaching assistants are there to help you too. So master's and PhD students are typically teaching assistants for their professors. So they may be teaching lower level courses like English 101, and they also will be supporting their professors in the higher level courses like, Business 300 and all of that. So you have the support of your professor and teaching assistants to help you succeed. There's also preceptors, which are students who previously completed the course that you are in. So it's always good to try to make friends with the upperclassmen. I know it seems a little scary because they're a little bit older than you maybe, and you think that maybe they're wiser than you. But trust me, as somebody who has been through it, I'm always have been happy to assist people and, give them my textbook that I no longer need and is just taking up space in my house. So really try to branch out and talk to people when you're, getting settled in at your institution, wherever it might be, because they're definitely more willing to help than you think they are. Some of the colleges that we have at the University of Arizona are listed on the screen here. We have over 300 majors that you can choose from at our institution. So whatever it is that you are thinking about studying, we probably have it for you. And when you get into something like pharmaceutical sciences, and then you realize you don't want to be a pharmacist, and maybe you want to study, psychology instead after taking a psychology class. In the US, it's pretty easy to change your major within the first couple years of study. So you don't have to know exactly what it is that you're wanting to do right away. I know it can be kind of scary when you're thinking about, okay, I think I want to be a doctor. And then you go into it and you're like, nope, I definitely don't want to be a doctor. Maybe you want to do research instead for public health. Or maybe you want to do something entirely different, like business. It's all okay. There are lots of resources to help you navigate and figure out the best career for you. Here is an example about how to apply. So for our institution, we don't require a personal statement, which is what, this whole presentation is really about. A lot of institutions do. We have the optional space for a personal statement, and we highly can tell people that they should really submit that. It's very recommended so that we can get a better picture of who you are as a student, why you're choosing our institution, and how we can help you succeed in whatever career path you are wanting to be in. So it's pretty easy to apply to the University of Arizona. You just go to our website and you submit the application prior to the deadline. You upload your transcripts, and we also need English translations for those. And then you would also need to provide proof of English proficiency. So that's just showing that we know when you are getting into those classes, you will be set up for success because you'll be taught entirely in English. And then for our institution, we do require payment of the application fee. And that's because that payment goes toward the salaries and supporting people in admissions, such as myself and my colleagues who process all the applications. And we get thousands of applications. So that's why we do require the application fee. You can utilize Common App as well if you're thinking about applying to multiple institutions in order to try to reduce the amount of application fees that you'll need to pay. So that's definitely an option as well. Here's an example of our cost of attendance. That's a really big thing that you should definitely consider when you are looking at different institutions to apply to. Some institutions, like private institutions or really big ones, such as Harvard, they do offer full scholarships to a very select few students. Our institution, we offer scholarships to our international students if they have good grades. We do not offer full scholarships because we are a state institution. So that means we are funded by our state government. So we're not able to offer full scholarships. This is just a breakdown and something to kind of consider for 1 year of study at the University of Arizona. So you can see tuition and fees. You have to think about housing and meals too, right? Where are you going to sleep? What are you going to eat? And health insurance is a really important part of studying in the United States. We want to make sure that if you accidentally trip in the street and break your wrist, that you're going to be okay and not have to worry about a $20,000 medical bill just when you go to the doctor. So that's why it is a requirement to show you have sufficient funding before you can get the documentation you need to go through the visa process. Students on a student visa are expected to focus on their studies. They're not allowed to work full time while they're studying and all of that, because we want to make sure that you are focused, that you know exactly, where you're going and all of that with classes, and that you don't have to worry about where your next meal is coming from or how you're going to pay rent next month. Like I said, we do have scholarships. So here's some examples. Our Global Wildcat Award does not require an application. When you submit an application to the University of Arizona, you're automatically considered for that award. And it's entirely based on your grades. We also have our Regional Service and Leadership scholarship. So that is a post-admission application. You'd get an email about it with instructions on how to apply for that. And then also admitted students can access our Scholarship Universe platform, which has over like 20,000 different scholarships that you can also apply for, depending on if you meet their requirements and all of that. So here's some tips when you're applying in general. Make sure that your academic history is very thorough. We want to see all of your transcripts. We want to ensure that all of the fields of your application that are required are submitted correctly. And like I said, submitting that personal statement is also really important. And then paying the application fee to make sure that everything is squared away and you can be reviewed for admission. And the biggest thing, check your email, because you're going to be getting emails about additional documents that might be needed. Or you might get an email from me as your enrollment counselor, checking in to make sure you don't have any questions, or maybe if you want to meet and talk about options and things like that. So keep that in mind and be sure to be proactive about applying, as well as proactive about communicating with your institution that you're applying to set yourself up for success early. So when we're talking about that personal statement or the essays that we are looking for as admission officers, the big question is, how much time does an admission officer spend on reviewing those essays and that personal statement? It's only about 33% of the total time they are looking at your application, which is generally not very long because, like I said, we have to review thousands of applications. So they may be looking at your statement or your essay for less than a minute. So what are you going to do to make sure that you are utilizing every single second that they are going to be looking at that and considering you? The essay is so important. Like I said, we want you to paint a picture for us of who you are, why you are wanting to study astrophysics, what, makes our institution the one that you really want to attend, and things like that. So here's some quotes from different directors of admissions and deans of admissions at different institutions, talking about why it is so important to include it, even if it's not required. Here's some do's when considering writing your college essay. Please be sure to give the admission officer a reason to keep reading. Like I said, if you had 1,000 letters in front of you that you had to read, and some of them were so boring, you just couldn't keep reading them. Kind of like some people when they read Lord of the Rings. It's just too much information. It's overwhelming. You can't even get past the first 5 pages, right? It's the same thing with reading an admission essay. So please be sure to put a lot of time and effort into your introduction. You might create a little bit of mystery and intrigue about you so that we want to keep reading and know more. Don't give away the whole story right at the beginning. And be sure to shrink what you want to say and be concise. You don't need to use a lot of big words and things like that. One sentence might do the trick. So like this example here, my favorite science project was a complete failure. Well, now I want to know why. And also, was there an explosion? Make sure to keep your focus narrow. The essay should provide a single point. So we only want to know how you're answering our question, right? Not how you even got to thinking about the question to begin with. Essays that try to be too comprehensive might end up sounding a little bit watered down, and that's not very fun to read either. You have to make sure that you are focusing on the message. The key is to focus and tell them what you are really wanting to tell them, not how you got to thinking about what you want to tell them. Don't get so involved in telling a detailed story that the important message gets buried inside of it. So we have to really decipher what it is that you are trying to say. Make sure to keep it personal as well. We want to know about you, not one of your friends, not your relatives, not your whole family life story. It should be your story about you. It's not about the story of the student sitting next to you or the person in the high school in the next town over or whatever it is. It's about you. I know that might sound a little bit selfish, but that is what we want to see because we want to know about you. And you want to make sure you're developing your main idea with very vivid, specific facts, examples, events, and all of that. There's a big difference between saying, I like to be surrounded by people with a variety of backgrounds and interests, than saying something like, during that night, I sang the theme song from Casablanca with a baseball coach who thinks he's bogey, discussed Marxism with a little old lady, and heard more than I ever wanted to know about some woman's gallbladder operation. Do you see the difference? You really need to be specific as well. Avoid being cliched, generic, and having predictable writing because that really bores us and then we'll skim over things. And you don't want us to skim over you and who you are, right? So you can see the boring and generic here. I want to help people. I've gotten so much out of life through the love and guidance of my family. I feel that many individuals have not been as fortunate. Therefore, I would like to expand the lives of others. Okay. Well, how are you going to do that? There's so many different ways to expand the lives of others. So a much better way of illustrating that is provided here, right? My mom and dad stood on plenty of sidelines till their shoes filled with water or their fingers turned white, or somebody's golden retriever signed his name on their coats in mud. That kind of commitment is what I'd like to bring to working with fourth graders. Okay, so now we know this student wants to work with fourth graders. That's a whole lot more than we got with I would like to expand the lives of others, right? Be sure you're showing, don't just tell them. This passage here shows us how the author feels and thinks more so than if the author had spelled it out for us. So, when night fell upon the summit, I stared at the slowly appearing stars until they completely filled the night sky. Despite the windy conditions and below freezing temperatures, I could not tear myself away. It's a little dramatic, but it really does show, right? And be sure you know your subject. Any factual errors in your essay will definitely show that you haven't really done your research, that you haven't taken the time to make sure that you have a solid personal statement or essay that we want to actually read. You could say, you want to attend Syracuse University and major in international business, but that would definitely be incorrect because Syracuse doesn't even have an international business major. Don't forget to answer the question. A lot of students try to turn their 500-word essay into a total autobiography, but they fail to answer the question. So make sure that every sentence that you're writing is focused on answering that question. After you're done writing, ask yourself, is this crucial to the essay? For every single sentence when you're reviewing it. And I highly recommend you have somebody else read your essay too before you submit it, because another pair of eyes is so helpful, especially when you've been staring at the same essay for hours. By the end of it, you've convinced yourself that you really got it and you're a genius and it sounds so good. And then somebody else looks at it and goes, I'm confused. And then you have to, go in and make some changes, but that's what it's all about. Having feedback is really helpful to make sure that you have a strong essay and personal statement so that you're giving yourself the best chance. Make sure to vary your sentences and use transitions as well. Never using just like, I did this, and I did that, and I did this, and I did that. We want to see those transitional words. Remember, transitions are not limited to nevertheless, furthermore, or consequently. So Google it. Find out what different transitionary words you can use, because there's a lot of them out there. And it really helps when you're writing an essay to make it something that we want to continue reading. And also be sure to vary your sentence lengths, but don't have a lot of run-on sentences. If I have to read a sentence that is 6 lines long, I'm going to forget the beginning of the sentence, and that's not good. So remember that too. Always use action, voice, verbs. The passive of this would be, the tray of food was dropped by the waiter. An active one would be, the waiter dropped the tray of food. Let's get to the point. We don't need to be flat and uninteresting. We just want to know, all right, the waiter dropped the tray of food. Now what? Be sure to conclude effectively. I got this really good advice when I was in my undergrad. And they said, tell me what you're going to tell me more about it and all of it. Tell me what you told me. Avoid summarizing, right? Because basically you could just copy and paste that intro as your conclusion. And that's not very fun to read either. The conclusion is your last chance to persuade and impress admission officers. So make sure it's interesting for a long-lasting impression. Don't just recopy your introduction into the end and add one more sentence to it. A few don'ts for your college essay. Don't tell them what you think they want to hear. Like I said, they read thousands of these. So we all know what you think that we want to hear. Give us something else, please. Something that we actually want to read, as I said before. Bring something new to the table, not just what you think we want to hear. Don't go overboard with flattery. We know we're a good institution. We know that we have great resources for our students. Be sincere. We're not looking for a new way to view the world. We're looking for a new way to view you, the applicant. And don't visualize the admission committee as a bunch of stuffy old professors, okay? Do I look like a stuffy old professor? I hope not. So I can be kind of fun. I want to know how you can bring something cool and new to the table too. And don't be cynical or condescending, because that's not very fun to read either. And then we think, wow, they might be a little bit bitter. I'm not sure that our institution would be the best vibe for them. Don't use sweeping generalizations such as all Americans are conforming cowards. Don't be offensive. And if you think it's offensive, it probably is. I had a student that wrote me a blog about their country, and they were talking about how all these negative things about their culture and the lack of freedom and all of that. That's not what I wanted to read about their culture. I wanted to know, how they got to school and their favorite place to hang out after school, maybe their favorite food, things like that. So don't be so negative and cynical. We know that the world can be harsh, but that's not the point of writing these essays about your dreams and your hopes and who you hope to become one day. Don't write a resume. Most likely you're going to be painting that picture anyway in your application, or they may actually ask you to also submit your resume. So don't just repeat that information. I don't need to know your GPA or your SAT and ACT scores, or how many church events that you attended, or all the travels that you did, internships that you did, how long you played soccer for, and things like that. Most likely that's probably in your resume. So 2 different things: personal statement, resume. Don't just tell the story of your life. This is not an autobiography, and we all know that autobiographies are usually like 300 pages. I don't have time to read 300 pages when I have 10,000 applications to go through, okay? I'm sorry. Some of the best essays and the most memorable ones are very focused. It should not be the story of your life, but a small glimpse of it, one that is rich with meaning and alive with imagery. Essays about your family, your trip to France, your extracurricular activities can be effective as long as they are focused and specific. Remember, we are answering the essay question, not just giving me the overview of your whole life. So you can see some examples here. Maybe a single Christmas Eve Mass or Yom Kippur service, a meal of boiled tongue in Strasbourg, or maybe one day of scooping ice cream at Lime Ricky's, right? And I actually would want to know about the meal of boiled tongue in Strasbourg, just saying. And don't use 50 words when 5 will do. Like I said, if you have a sentence that is 6 lines long, I'm going to be tired by the time I get to the end of that sentence. And then I probably won't want to continue reading. So be sure that you have concise sentences. You're not using too many words. If you write something like "in society today," you could probably just change it to "now," right? You only get so many words with these essays, so make every single word count. Please don't bore me. That's hands down, the number one thing. If you take one thing from this, just please don't bore me. Please just try to be a little bit interesting. We have to read a lot of these, and we want to. That's why we chose this job in the first place. But you don't want to be so memorable that you come off as too eccentric or so bland that I think, why did I read this in the first place? So just try to think about how you can be clear, concise, give me a good picture of who you are, and try to be a little fun too. Don't use cliches. Here's a whole list of them that you can definitely probably take out, right? I learned my lesson. I can make a difference. Blank was the greatest lesson of all. I no longer take my loved ones for granted. We don't need these. You can definitely do better than a cliche. You are not a cliche, right? I'm going to emphasize it again. Please don't use cliches. You are telling me about what you've done, right? But you need to show me more about who you are. The only way to improve on these sentiments that you see here would be to enrich them with concrete details and use a more personal perspective. Something like that summer in New York truly broadened my horizons. That doesn't really help me understand how you're answering the question, right? About who you are and what you are wanting to study and accomplish in your career. Apparently, that summer in New York was awesome, but that doesn't really help me. Don't use a quote for quote's sake. We've all heard the quotes from Benjamin Franklin and John Lennon and, every other big person in history. You have a limited number of words, so please make them your own. Unless you're going to use a quotation as the basis for your essay overall, it's best to stick to your own words. And you can use, some generic statements when you're creating your outline of what it is that you're wanting to, get out of your essay, but don't just leave it in there. We want to know more. Don't just say, I chose the University of Arizona because the University of Arizona is committed to learning and I want to learn. Learning is important. That didn't tell me about you. You just told me about the fact that we're a school and you learn at a school. That's not helpful at all. How-to guides can be helpful, but you don't want to rigidly adhere to their formulas, okay? They definitely can help, but don't use their example topics. The What My Room Says About Me essay is way overdone, okay? So definitely keep that in mind as well. The thesaurus is a wonderful tool to use if you're using it correctly. So please use your own voice. Admission officers can tell, if you're using some extravagant words. You're a high school student. We love it, of course, if you're showing that you are very well educated, but you don't have to use super deep words and, talking like a philosopher in your personal statements and all of that. Powerful ideas are often best expressed in simple and elegant prose. Good writers use the best words, not the biggest words. Also, don't use slang. You're writing an essay, not a text message, not an email. So no LOLs, LMAOs, BT dubs, and definitely no FMLs, okay? Avoid words such as very, a lot, cool, awesome, and nice. You could do better than that. The biggest thing that you will know about any university, any school ever, do not ever plagiarize. Do not take somebody else's essay and make it yours. That is a big no-no, and that is already setting yourself up for failure if you, are starting out your university career with plagiarizing your essay or personal statement. And plus, we will probably know that you didn't write it yourself. And that's not a good look either. Don't buy it off the internet because we can also tell that too. And they usually will mark that essay as DDI. Daddy did it. Okay? That's funny, I know, but that will automatically get you rejected. So don't buy it off the internet and don't plagiarize it. It's not that hard to write it yourself. And as I said, if you have somebody else look at it after you're done writing it, it's going to be a really good essay. You just have to put the effort in. Don't recycle your essays. Don't use the same answer for entirely two different questions. We'll think you're lazy, and also we won't want to continue reading. Admissions officers from one institution can usually tell if they're handed an essay that answers a different institution's question. And definitely don't mess it up with this. I can't wait to wear a Harvard sweatshirt and an essay to the University of Massachusetts, okay? That always drives me insane. I get that a lot, and I'm like, if you could just proofread a little bit, like we touched on before, you'll be surprised at how much that difference can make. Most importantly, don't forget to proofread, as I said. I know that you have spent hours on this and you're exhausted and you don't want to look at it again, but please, please proofread. Otherwise, it can just show that you're careless, you have bad writing, and it can be distracting. Don't just rely on spell check. You can see here some examples. Spell check thought it was fine. After I graduate from high school, I plan to work for a nonprofit. Nope, that didn't work. Daniel was my best fried. I hope Daniel actually wasn't fried, because that doesn't sound very fun at all. Okay, now I've got a quick quiz for you here. But before I do that, my computer is going to die. Give me 1 second. I just need to plug it in. We all have flaws, okay? I know. Plus, it gives you a minute to think about all the things I just talked about. So that way you can ace these quizzes. Okay, we're plugged in now. I'm not going to die on you. So let's get going. What's wrong with these examples? I entered onto the scene of this terrestrial sphere on a vernal evening in 1994. That's pretty dramatic. And also, those are some big words. This is not a vocabulary test, okay? We don't need to know when you were born and how you came about and all of that. That's an autobiography, and it usually takes about 300 pages to write an autobiography. I don't have time to read that. What's wrong with this one? As a high school sophomore, I was our church's representative to the youth fellowship. I helped organize youth group events, the largest being the Bishop's Ball, a statewide event for 300 young people. I also played high school junior varsity soccer for 2 years. As a senior, I will be playing varsity soccer, but in the off season. As a junior, I coached a girls' soccer team for the town. You just wrote me your resume, okay? I don't need to know all of that because most likely I will have seen that elsewhere. This also is not really answering our essay question or giving me a truly concise view of a personal statement of who you are. The writer would have been better off focusing on one of these things. For example, one particular moment of one soccer game that she coached and how that ties into what she wants to do in university. Here's one. My favorite book is The Great Gatsby by Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens did not write The Great Gatsby. And now I know that you didn't actually read The Great Gatsby, okay? Get your facts straight before you hit submit. F. Scott Fitzgerald wrote The Great Gatsby, in case you were wondering. So I know that was a ton of information. I really hope that you learned at least a little something, and this helped you get a better idea about what we're expecting when you're applying to an institution, how to definitely show who you are, and how our institution can really be the best fit for you overall. So feel free to put your questions in the chat and we will answer them. Yana is also here along with me. I am always here to answer questions, but I am not the only one. Education USA advisors are awesome resources. I love them so much. They even help me. So let's see what questions we have.
Oh, thank you, Kessidi, for such a great presentation. I find it really valuable and important. And personally, I believe that my advisees actually have been watching your presentation. And I think that I have one question for you when our followers are writing them in the chat. And one of your advice sounds like keep it personal. Are there any limits of personal? How personal should be the essay? And maybe are there any topics that students should avoid?
That's a really great question for sure. We do want to know who you are, but you should keep it professional in a way. We don't need to know the nitty gritty of your life. Maybe if something really impacted your life that is personal, like maybe your mom got sick and that is the reason why you're wanting to go into, medicine or something like that. That might be something that you could touch on very briefly, but we don't need to know all the details about her diagnosis and how you felt and all the different things that you went through when processing that information until you got to the point where you said, I want to be a doctor.
Okay. Thank you for answering. Yeah, guys, please write your questions in the comments. We would be more than happy to provide the answers. Marina says, thank you for giving us such concrete steps. Kessidi, we are really grateful for these steps. And I have actually one more question. Is there any place for humor in the essay? Is it a great strategy to use it in it? Because, some people use it just like the way to express themselves. So can they use it in the essay?
Again, you can definitely use humor, but within reason, just like no oversharing, right? If it ties directly to the concrete evidence that you're wanting to show to answer the question, having a little spark of wittiness is always fun to read. But if you're just trying to be a comic for comic's sake, that's probably not a good strategy to use. So let me think of an example here. You could, talk about how, you watched your brother and he was always eating all of your food and you never really liked that. But then you had to learn how to share, right? Maybe something little like that, as long as it ties directly to the question that you're answering, would be okay.
Okay, got it. And we have a question in the chat, and it sounds like this. How I need to start my essay, what I need to say first.
That is always the hardest part about writing any essay or personal statement. Getting started is rough sometimes. And it definitely depends on the question, right? So, just the general personal statement question of tell us more about yourself and your goals. That's pretty generic, right? That doesn't really give you a good starting point necessarily. So, I would recommend you write down the answers to those questions. And then once you have that, you think, okay, how am I going to tie this all together to tell them, hey, I'm going to tell you all these answers, and there's multiple answers to your question. So something like, I had an example actually that I used before, and it was basically like, I messed up my science project and it was a complete failure. Okay, now I want to keep reading, right? Tell me more. Tell me what you learned. Tell me how that has influenced you to want to study physics or whatever it is that you are wanting to be admitted into. So even just something simplistic and kind of, really straight and to the point can really help get that started and make us want to continue reading. Something that's like, I chose the University of Arizona because I want to study physics. Okay, that you can do a little bit better than that. And if you need help, have somebody else read through it and see how they can make it, a little bit more expansive.
So yeah, as I see it, it's a great idea to use some hooks, even the simplest ones. We have one more question in the chat. Can you recommend us to use some internet resources or programs to correct stylistic mistakes, like Grammarly, for example?
Definitely. I am going to give our moderator a link.
Yes, so Kessidi is sharing the link and you will be able to see the QR code, and use it to follow the link. Just a second. Yes, thank you for question, guys. Thank you for being active. We really appreciate this.
Okay.
And I believe that you have a unique opportunity to ask, some questions. Yeah. Okay. So just in a moment, you will be able to scan the QR code. What website is it, Kessidi?
Yeah, so this is from Purdue University. It's called OWL, which is, I have actually used this website like 100 times throughout my entire undergrad. It gives you, it's like an online writing lab. It offers support through reference materials and helps you, get specific writing help depending on, avoiding plagiarism, different guides for styles of writing, and things like that. So it also gives you, kind of examples and what we're kind of looking for when you're talking about things like that. So that is definitely helpful as well. And if you want, even more specific information, you can definitely reach out to me and I can send you additional resources too. There's all kinds of books and things like that as well that you can, find in the library, and all of that. The library is my favorite place. You never know what you're going to find in there. So going to a librarian and asking them, hey, I'm trying to write these college essays. Do you have a section, in your library that might have some resources that are useful to me? You'll be surprised at what you can really find there.
Oh, thank you for sharing such resources. Yeah, and it's really great advice. By the way, what about using of AI? Yeah, is it pretty visible when students use ChatGPT, for example, and can they use it and benefit from using it somehow?
That's also a really good question. My mom is a professor, and when she's reading her essays, it's kind of like a game to her. She's like, I'm pretty sure this was written by AI. And then she'll have me read it. And I'm like, yeah, that's definitely written by AI. So we can really tell when something is not, clearly written by you. Now, for example, if you're trying to get a point across and you're not really sure how to phrase it, you can utilize AI to help you with like parts of your essay. Like if they're asking you a really specific question, right? Like, who is your hero and why? And you want to say, you have your sentences, but you're like, I feel like this could be written a little bit more concisely. You can ask AI, how do I concisely phrase this? And use your phrasing and ask it, to kind of help you with the writing. Don't ask it to write the whole thing for you, because we will know and will be very disappointed that you didn't write it yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Because I think that many students are actually interested in, using ChatGPT, but yeah, you have to use it properly, guys. Okay, are there any other questions? If you have them, please write them in the chat. So last chance to ask your questions. Yeah. Anyway, Kessidi, it was really interesting lecture. It was really useful. I will definitely recommend to rewatch it to my advisees. Thank you for all the tips, for all insights and tools that you have provided us with. Yep, that's it.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions, and I think that we can stop here.
I did just have one more link to share. Sorry for interrupting.
It's okay.
I'll have the moderator put the link to the General University of Arizona website. If you're interested in taking a specific look at the University of Arizona, if you want to schedule a virtual meeting with me or look at the different events, virtual events and webinars that we're hosting, that is a super useful tool. We do all kinds of things like how to finance your studies and how to navigate all kinds of different aspects of choosing the right university and all of that. So definitely be sure to scan this QR code and definitely keep in touch with me.
Such a great opportunity to have meeting with you. So guys, don't miss this opportunity. It definitely worth of using. Thank you, Kessidi. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. Yeah, we really appreciate it, and have a great evening. Bye bye.